right, welcome to Talkin' Investing. I'm Tom, and as always, this is not financial advice. Today, I want to talk about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. This is a weekly update. We do this every week on the channel. This week was an outstanding week, so this is an exciting one. I've been looking forward to it. I hope you guys have been too. There's a lot of stuff going on with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, so big update coming at you. I'll try and get through this as fast as I can. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you've been here for a while and you have not yet subscribed, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It really helps the channel out a lot. Still, about half of the people that watch these videos are not yet subscribed, so we would appreciate it. Also, you can smash the like button and you can hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. All right, let's talk about Bitcoin. Okay, the first chart I want to look at is week over week. Bitcoin miners had about a 4-month window of time where they drastically lagged the performance of Bitcoin. For the last several weeks on the channel, we've been talking about the fact that I think the Bitcoin miners are going to make a big run and outperform Bitcoin starting several weeks ago, and I think through the end of the year in particular, I think the Bitcoin miners are going to continue to outperform Bitcoin. We saw very small moves in the right direction. This was the week. We had some gigantic breakouts. So I want to look at this week. You look at this week and it is massively, massively green. In a lot of ways, this almost looks like a year-to-date chart, but it's not. This is what happened to the Bitcoin miners this week. So a couple of things to note. As always, you will see in gold, Bitcoin. Bitcoin was up 3%. That's a good week. We are deep, deep into a bull market here for Bitcoin. To have another 3% up week is fantastic. I will tell you, this is as of Friday over the weekend so far, and it's the middle of the day on Sunday. We're up another $1,000. Not sure if that's going to hold or not. We'll see what happens. So in the last week, in the same time, you'll see in purple, the NASDAQ was up 0%. So for a long time this year, the Bitcoin miners seem to be following the equity markets. There was probably a 4-month window where that was true, but that is no longer true. So you're going to see in the week where NASDAQ was up 0, all of these Bitcoin miners, with the exception of one, were in the green, and some of them absolutely took off this week. Okay, so let's go to the top of the list. Mawson, stock ticker MIGI, up 71%. This has been the worst performing Bitcoin miner of the year all year this year. So you're going to see, even with this 71% move, when we get to some of the later charts, you're going to see it's still been a pretty disastrous year for Mawson. But obviously, if you were in this trade this week, that is a spectacular week. A 71% move to the upside in 1 week for any stock is just tremendous. Mawson is a nano cap stock, but we had some much larger stocks have big moves this week. Iris Energy was up 57%. Bitfarms was up 55%. Cleanspark was up 37%. Those four in particular significantly outperformed even the rest of the Bitcoin miners, and most of the rest of the Bitcoin miners this week were somewhere above 5x leverages on Bitcoin. So you can see these were astronomical moves to the upside for these four in particular. But even if you look at the next group, if you look at Marathon, which is the largest Bitcoin miner by market cap, Marathon was up 20% this week. You got to go way down the list to find Riot. So you're going to see Riot down here. That was up 15%. That's a 5x leverage to the upside. So that looks like it, it didn't necessarily have a good week compared to its competition. That's how good all the Bitcoin miners did this week. There were only a few underperformers. Core Scientific was down 13% this week. There was some news over the last week that shed a little light on what this company is going to look like coming out of Chapter 11. It did seem to indicate to me that a pullback was required. There was a big pullback on the initial day, and I will tell you guys, if on that initial day, despite the fact that it had a big pullback, I felt there was a lot more to come, and we have seen that happen. So I don't know, it may be done correcting. I think it's about now where I expected it to be, but that doesn't mean, it's going to stop. The market doesn't always do what it should do. So I would just say be careful with Core Scientific, because I think within a month, according to them, they're going to be coming out of Chapter 11, and that's always a very, very unknown event. We don't know what's going to happen to the stock. So not financial advice. You guys do whatever you want. If you invested in Core Scientific this year, you're going to see they had the best year out of everybody. But as of recently, they've been coming back down to earth. Okay, now I want to go to a 7-week window of time. I picked 7 weeks ago because the last 7 weeks have been a spectacular run for Bitcoin. This is 7 weekly candles in a row that were green. That is very rare. Again, this hasn't happened in 3 years. October of 2020 was the last time that this happened. So this has been a spectacular run for Bitcoin. So what I've been trying to do is track the Bitcoin miners' performance against Bitcoin in this 7-week window of time. Okay, for the first few weeks of this 7-week period, Bitcoin was outperforming basically every single Bitcoin miner, and that was the continuation of a trend that had been going on for months and months and months. But when we started this particular chart, I talked about the fact that I think think between then and the end of the year, a lot of the Bitcoin miners were going to pass up Bitcoin on this chart. So you can see that is now really starting to happen. This week, a lot of these moved ahead of Bitcoin. In this 7-week period, Bitcoin's up 45%. Bitcoin was already up, the better part of 100% prior to this 7-week period. So this is the continuation of an outstanding bull run for Bitcoin. Now you're going to see we have 8 of the 19 Bitcoin miners that we follow are now ahead of Bitcoin in this 7-week period. I don't think every single Bitcoin miner is going to pass Bitcoin. I have been saying for most of the year this year, I do think there are going to be winners and losers in this space. I don't think there's going to be a lot of companies that lose, but I do think there's going to be a handful, somewhere around 5 or 6 or 7 companies that will either underperform Bitcoin or may not make it at all through the halving, and beyond. But for the most part, and particularly the Bitcoin miners that we talk about on this channel, I do think there's a lot of room left to the upside. And when we go to the next chart, you're going to see even with this performance here in the last 7 weeks, most of these Bitcoin miners have a lot of catching up to do just to get to where they should be in relationship to Bitcoin, in my opinion. Okay, so just to mention a few, in this 7-week period, CleanSpark is up 117%. They lead the way. Most of this run is in the last 2.5 weeks. Iris Energy's up 83% in the last 7 weeks, and the same thing. Most of this run is in the last week and a half. Marathon, the largest Bitcoin miner by market cap, is up 78% in the last 7 weeks. I mean, these are big runs. And I will say, for the last several months prior to this, the comments section on the channel was absolutely filled up with people talking about how these stocks were dead money. A lot of these stocks are going to zero. So investor sentiment was as low or maybe even worse than it was in the middle of the crypto winter last year. But I know that a lot of our subscribers and a lot of our members in particular have stuck with a lot of these stocks in a time where it was very, very difficult. The next chart is going to show just how difficult it was to hold on to these stocks. So congratulations to everybody who made it through this run and is now catching the upside on these stocks. And you can see in the last 7 weeks, the upside has been massive for a lot of these stocks. Okay, if we go to the bottom of this list, there are still some stocks that are underperforming. Any, which is Sphere 3D, is down 31% in this 7 weeks. Core Scientific was down 26%. So in the 7 weeks, the Nasdaq's actually had a nice run, up 7% here in purple. You're gonna see there's a group of other stocks. BitDeer's up 11%, and then you've got a bunch up 20, 21, 22%. These stocks are underperforming in this 7-week period of time. So the question is for each of you, are these stocks underperforming because there's a fundamental problem with these stocks, or have they just not had, quote, their turn yet? So one of the points of this chart is just to try to take a look and see, are there some opportunities in here? Are there some stocks that are underperforming for companies that maybe you think are doing well? Okay, now let's go to the 20-week. For the very first time in this 20-week chart, we see green on this chart. All of these stocks a month ago, and really for about 3 or 4 months, were on the average down 50%. A lot of them were down in the 70s. So now we're starting to see big movement on this chart. Essentially why we're tracking this 20-week window. This goes back to July 14th. Bitcoin hit its high for the year on July 13th. That was at around 31,800. So obviously we are way beyond that right now. At the moment, Bitcoin's trading over 39,000. So this is why I'm saying this has been a very difficult time to hold on to the Bitcoin miners. But you can see the reversal is really starting to take effect. CleanSpark is the first of what I think is going to be several of these stocks to get in the green by the end of the year. We have DMG, which is a nano cap. They're down 15%. But Bitfarms, which is, a medium-sized Bitcoin miner, they're down now only 16% in this window of time. Iris Energy only 22%. Marathon, which is the largest by market cap, they are only down 24%. So I think a lot of these stocks in this range right here are going to get into the green between now and the end of the year, meaning they're going to catch up and pass their high for the year in 2023. So we'll have to see what happens. Obviously, that's not financial advice, and we don't know until we get there. At any time, we are long overdue for a pullback. Bear that in mind, that there could be short-term pullbacks. If we look at the bottom of this list, there are still some that are drastically underperforming. Sphere 3D, stock ticker Any, is still down 70%. BitDeer's down 64% in this 20-week window. Mawson, which was up over 70% this week, that still leaves them down 63% on the year. So you can see just what a brutal year they had. A lot of these stocks, I'm not expecting these to go green. I did say, in my opinion, I do think we will have some winners and losers here in this space. So, obviously you guys got to decide which ones you think are which. Okay, lastly, I want to take a look at the year to date. So this is starting to look like what we expect out of the Bitcoin miners. For a lot of this year, Bitcoin was outperforming a lot of the Bitcoin miners year to date. It's still outperforming several of them right now, but we are starting to see a larger and larger group that are a 2x or a 3x or a 4x leverage, which is what we expect out of these Bitcoin miners. So Bitfarms up 134% on the year as of Friday. CleanSpark's now a 2x leverage to the upside on that. Bitfarms is up 277%. That's a 2x leverage. Marathon and Riot up 301 and 306% on the year. Those stocks have been performing extremely well. And then you're going to see at the top, Core Scientific's up 433%. This stock was up over 1,500% in July of this year. Cypher is only a few percentage points behind this now, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the next week Cypher actually passes Core Scientific, and that would be the first week of the year that Core Scientific was not the best performing Bitcoin mining stock year to date. On the flip side, there are some stocks, again, that the market seems to be concerned about. Argo Blockchain's only up 15% in the same period of time that Bitcoin's up 134%. Stronghold is in the red still, down 7%. Mawson is still down 32% year to date, despite being up over 70% this last week. And any Sphere 3D is down 59% year to date. So I do think the market is worried about these four in particular. I think there's a couple of others that are going to have a really tough time at the halving. You're going to see there are two other stocks that are underperforming Bitcoin year to date, and they are Gree and TeraWolf. This chart shows two things. By the end of the year here, a lot of the Bitcoin miners are starting to perform the way that you would expect them versus Bitcoin, and it also shows the discrepancy. There are already winners and losers here in this space from an investment standpoint. So as always, these stocks are extremely volatile, so please be careful. Understand this is a leveraged play on an extremely volatile asset, which is Bitcoin. So I try to drive this home in every video. Please know your stock, and if you're going to invest in a Bitcoin miner, you should do your due diligence and understand the risk. Lastly, it's worth noting that we're having a breakout even over the weekend here. We will see if this holds on, but Saturday we had a big green candle. In the middle of the day, Sunday, we're having another green candle. We are currently, as I'm making this video, at the high for the year for Bitcoin. We're at $39,770, so we are just under $40,000. We're going to keep our eye on this and see if maybe Bitcoin can cross that $40,000 mark. That would be the first time since May of 2022, so well over a year and a half. We continue to hit higher highs in the year. The bull market continues. So this was a fantastic week for Bitcoin. It was an outstanding week for the Bitcoin miners, and it seems to be continuing through the weekend. So obviously we'll check in Monday morning and see what's going on. Hopefully all you guys had a great week investing and just a great week overall. So thanks so much for joining us. Please feel free to subscribe, smash the like button, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.